Well, as we go to air tonight, the United States of America is a nation divided. Since George Floyd's tragic death at the hands of a white policeman last week, the message from angry Americans has been blunt and it has been clear. Black lives matter. From the streets of Minneapolis, where George lived and died, to the wealthy suburbs of Los Angeles, where ugly riots and looting have sadly been the norm. Even the capital, Washington, is under siege as protesters gathered outside the White House demanding justice. Let's begin our coverage in Atlanta. Kevin Miles is from the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, and I spoke to him a short time ago. Kevin, thank you so much for your time. I lived in America. I love America, but I can't fathom how it's turned so ugly so quickly.
And actually, unfortunately, I would even have to challenge that, because the issues that have undergirded this crisis, the issues that brought us to this moment, are actually a part of American society and have been from its very founding. It is only now that these things are coming to the surface in a way that has built up enough momentum where perhaps we may see some long-term systemic change.
You have a very peaceful protest, but the looters and the thugs are making more noise than that right now.
I would say that, all across the country, there is a need or a part of people that cries out for justice, and it leads people to want to go out and participate in a series of peaceful protests. Now, some of these protests have turned a bit more violent. However, I don't want to spend the time to really judge how people process their pain or how people process their anger. I think what's more important is that we focus on the fact that these long-term systemic issues have made people feel so helpless and so desperate that even in the midst of a national or a global pandemic, people still feel that it is in their best interest to go out to the streets and to protest peacefully, we hope, but there have been occasions where that has not been the case. But rather than judge those who have processed their pain a little bit differently, in ways that perhaps I would rather that they didn't, we have to look at the fact that people have to process that pain, they have to process that hurt, and they have to answer that call within them for justice. And strangely enough, it has brought us to this moment where we are amplifying these calls for justice all across the globe.
From what I can see, though, Kevin, the looters aren't necessarily the same as the protesters. The protesters have reform in mind. The looters have pillaging in mind.
I would argue that there's a group of people who definitely want to go out and peacefully protest. We have seen some folks who have gone out and joined into protests, particularly in some cities towards the end of those protests, who have their own agendas. They have their own issues in mind. But again, I don't want to be one who tries to gentrify outrage and tell people how to express their anger and how to express their frustration. But I do want to say that the acts of violence, those issues with looting, that should not characterize this movement. This is a movement that is brought about because a group of police officers knelt on the neck of a man, and one officer in particular held his knee on the neck of George Floyd for 8 minutes, and 3 minutes after he had already become non-responsive. And this happened on the heels of Breonna Taylor, who was murdered inside of her home when she had done absolutely nothing wrong, by officers who served a no-knock warrant, where they broke in the door without announcing who they were or why they were there. They ended up going to the wrong house and killing an innocent woman while she was in her bedroom. This happened on the heels of Ahmaud Arbery, who was chased down and murdered while he was jogging down the street. And during this same time, there was another incident with a man who asked a woman to put a leash on her dog in a park where leashes were required, and she responded by picking up the phone, calling the police, and pretending that she had been assaulted by the man, an act that could have cost him his life. So I want to make sure that we're keeping the focus there, because those incidents are new incidents in a long line and a long lineage of injustices that have led us to this moment. And I don't want to see us squander the moment and the opportunity to bring forth an argument for long-term systemic change by focusing on a few bad actors.
So we need change, and we need real reform here. But how do you bring calm in the meantime while the slow wheels of reform get turning?
That's an excellent question. And I think what we have to do is we have to be very consistent and in our messaging, and make sure that in all of our respective cities and all of our respective municipalities, we take that agenda for reform and that agenda for change, and we keep pressing that same agenda even through these tumultuous moments. We find ourselves now where, you know, the tumult of all of the things that's going on creates a cacophony of noise, and it's very difficult for people to hear those salient messages. But I believe that to the degree that we are consistent, to the degree that we exercise some fidelity to the core principles of justice, which is all that we've ever fought for as an organization for as long as we've been in existence, as long as we exercise some fidelity to that mission and we keep driving that same message home, the ears and the eyes of the world are upon us. And in this moment, if we stay true to that mission, I believe we'll break through.
Kevin, as a proud black man, how does all this make you feel?
You know, it is a special kind of, it is a special kind of pain to realize that, you know, as a father of a young black man, that his life could be so easily taken, and that we cannot necessarily depend on the justice system to stand up and be just on our behalf. But that same feeling is what animates us to go out and do this work. That same sense that, you know what, the system is not fair, but I believe in fairness. The system is not just, but I believe in justice. And because I believe that those things can and should be, the absence of them does not lead me into despair. However, it does animate me and push me forward to make me want to do this work and connect with the work at an even deeper level.
I really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.